story proper that I'm going to read is called The Leaving. This is in Blood Rights, An Invitation to Horror, which came out last year. Drawn by the tinkle of the bell above the door, Georgina blew out a relieved breath. Paul. At his feet, just before he closed the door, a scattering of leaves, black and curled like burnt scraps of paper, blew across the old, faded linoleum. Aside from Mrs. D'Angelo wiping down some tables, they had Georgina's small diner to themselves. Good, just how she wanted it. Late afternoon sun through the big front window illuminated his grin, stubble on his chin, and undone buttons at the neck of his flannel shirt revealed dark curls. Smoothing down her apron and hoping she looked better than hideous after a day's work, Georgina moved to the counter and said, "Hi, Paul." "Good afternoon," he replied, grin growing. Then the barnyard stink struck Georgina, overpowering the diner's salty, deep-fried smells. The decade-old memory of Colin pounding on the back door flashed across her mind's eye. But Paul was here, now, safe. 4 days ago, when the leaving had started, she looked up every time the bell rang, wanting it to be him. So far, there had only been word of that one boy being killed. But no matter how many times she assured herself that someone must have told Paul by now, she worried over whether anyone would know if something had happened to him. He sat in the stool opposite her. "We're closing in 15 minutes, Georgina said. "Kitchen shut down, but could get you a beer." "Yes, please, I'm just here to say hi." Halfway down the narrow aisle, Mrs. D'Angelo looked up and cocked an eyebrow. Georgina grabbed a mug and poured his favorite draft. "Haven't seen you around. Began to worry something happened." He had to know, she told herself, setting the mug on the counter. Word would have gotten around. A new man in town, all alone, cleaning out his newly inherited grandmom's place. "I've been working in the barn," he replied. "There are so many things to sort through." He took a quick sip. "So what is it with the notice from the police on the door? A coyote attack and curfew? Is it related to the smell and the leaves turning black?" Georgina's stomach dropped. He didn't know. But if he was in the barn last night? Down the aisle, Mrs. D'Angelo made her way toward Georgina. Georgina realized she'd be the one to tell him. That was okay. She had prepared for it, rehearsed what she would say, been prepared since Jefferson Hollow had awoken to find the leaves on all of the trees fading from brilliant green to matte black a month earlier than their usual transformation to fiery brilliance. She would explain the smell, the leaves, and the rules everyone in Jefferson Hollow knew. Stay indoors at night. Georgina waited for Mrs. D'Angelo to come around behind the counter. The older woman had lived all of her 72 years in the Hollow and explained the leaving to others, including her late husband. Between the two of them, Paul would have to believe. Georgina opened with, "A boy was killed last night, out in Sunrise Village, that new housing development." Paul leaned forward. "Oh my God, what happened?" She'd expected he'd want details. Paul worked as a medical examiner in the city. Taking a deep breath, she began, "We don't know." Mrs. D'Angelo laid a hand on Georgina's shoulder. In the parking lot, two pickups turned into spaces. Brawny men wearing reflective orange vests over sweat-stained t-shirts climbed out of the beds and cabs. Mrs. D'Angelo gave a squeeze. "Hurry," she seemed to say. Paul looked at Georgina, waiting. She wanted to take her time, explain it, answer his questions. She sputtered, At night." Loud, deep voices on the steps. "Should I tell them we're closed?" Mrs. D'Angelo asked. Paul turned toward the door. "No," Georgina said, letting out a breath, "but one round." The bell clanged as men came in, heavy boots thumping, black leaves blowing in on a breeze carrying the animal smell. Mrs. D'Angelo let out a frustrated snort, readjusted the clasp holding a bun of silver hair in place, then set her shoulders in her best "I work for tips" posture before approaching the booths where the men settled in. Paul touched her hand and said, "You were saying about the boy." Georgina had rehearsed it like this. As Mrs. D'Angelo explained that the diner was closing, Georgina scanned the men's faces, not recognizing a one, not locals. They'd call her story of leaves and smells and death crazy, and might convince Paul. "Coyotes caught him as he was walking home alone," she said, echoing the police chief's official statement, a statement that newcomers in Sunrise Village would accept. "Best to keep indoors. You closing early because of coyotes?" chuckled one of the men, turning to face Georgina. "To a pack of them, you'd be a tasty morsel," Mrs. D'Angelo spat over her shoulder, passing the order pad to Georgina. "Grab the beer, sweetie." Smiling at Paul, Georgina moved to the cooler. They'll find the construction crew working Highway 27, Mrs. D'Angelo muttered to Georgina as they assembled the order. Far enough south of Fellows Point now, it's almost the same distance to get here. We'll be seeing more like them soon. Georgina couldn't blame Mrs. D'Angelo for her resentment. Despite its dangers, despite her children leaving decades ago, the older woman loved Jefferson Hollow, said she'd die there, felt the leaving forced a hardy, self-reliant character on its residents that most small towns had lost. But Highway 27 would change all that, and this crew symbolized that inevitable change. It looks like you have your hands full, Paul said as Georgina placed bottles on a tray. He stood, reaching for his wallet. Oh, come back tomorrow. Stay inside after dark, Mrs. D'Angelo said, carrying a tray to the men. Paul grinned. I'll be okay, it's just 20 feet to the barn. Panic leapt up, icy and sharp. Paul, Georgina began, not sure what to say. Really, you should. His eyebrows knit. What are you doing for dinner? The usual, he said, grinning. Something on the barbecue? Do you have other ideas? Heart thudding. You could come to my place. His grin widened. I would love to. What can I bring? Just yourself. When and where? 6 o'clock? Georgina gave directions to her house. He handed over some bills covering his beer and a generous tip. I'll see you soon. Georgina watched him glow. You're glowing, sweetie, Mrs. D'Angelo said, coming behind the counter with an empty tray. Are you planning on having supper in an hour and sending him on his way before sunset, or? Georgina grinned, heart still a heavy beat in her chest. It had been a while since she'd had a man in her life, but all of them had pursued her, asked her, made the moves. And they'd all been happy here in the Hollow. Farm kids, sons taking over their dad's stores, tradesmen servicing cottages up and down County Road 626, high school educated or dropouts, none wanting something better, to get out. Not since Colin anyway. I don't know, Georgina said, but I've got to get something for supper and take a shower, then go. I can handle these guys. Are you sure? I've done this plenty of times when your mom got sick. You go. Georgina kissed Mrs. D'Angelo on the cheek and hurried to her car. From the parking lot, Georgina turned right on County Road 626 and drove south toward town. This far outside the town center, only a few trees were bare. Someone passing through would barely know anything was wrong. Ahead of her, it was different. But behind her, 626 followed a twisting path north into the city, over an hour away. Highway 27, straight, smooth, 4 lanes wide, would cut that time in half. Already it had transformed the small towns along its route into bedroom communities. Sunrise Village was the first step toward monotonous, vinyl-sided neighborhoods, restaurant chains, neon signs, and massive box store parking lots. Though she understood Mrs. D'Angelo's feelings, Georgina welcomed the change. Since she'd been a girl, the town had remained the same. Even her girlfriends were the same ones from high school. She'd almost gotten out. Hard work in school, despite after-hour shifts, after-school shifts, netted scholarship offers. But her mom's condition got worse, so she'd stayed, working the diner and taking classes at the community college up in Fellows Point. Then Colin, then her mom. In town, oaks, maples, and elms stretched bare gray branches to the sky. Cars hurried up and down Main Street as people finished errands before sunset. Black leaves blew through the parking lot behind the grocery store as Georgina got out and rushed inside. The same store, Georgina reflected, run by the same family. Only the high school kids at the cash register changed. But Paul was new. When he'd first arrived, intent on cleaning up the farmhouse and selling it before going back to his life, she'd allowed herself impossible little fantasies of city life. Managing a small restaurant, visiting little boutique shops, going dancing, and dating Paul. But after a week, he'd taken a liking to the town. Never been here, he had said. His grandmom always visited them. Might keep the house for weekends and vacations. Maybe ask a friend in the county office up at Fellows Point about openings. That's when she started shaving her legs again and wearing makeup to work. An announcement that the store would be closing in 5 minutes on account of the curfew pulled Georgina from her thoughts. She got in line at the checkout, rehearsing what she'd tell Paul about the leaving. Reaching the register, she didn't recognize the girl tallying up her things. Probably another kid from the Hollow starting an after-school job. But what if she was from Sunrise Village? Had someone warned her? A teacher? A friend? Paying, Georgina thought about how many others wondered the same thing across Jefferson Hollow. Heading for her car, black leaves crunching under her feet, she considered what would happen when Highway 27 finally passed through Jefferson Hollow and hundreds or thousands moved here. When the next leaving started, it wouldn't just be one boy the first night. But she'd tell people just as she'd tell Paul, and after tonight, Paul would help spread the word. Tonight, even with that, even with what she had to tell him, the thought of what else might happen tickled her all over. Georgina stowed the vacuum in the closet just as the doorbell rang. Opening the door revealed Paul, slacks and a polo, replacing jeans and work shirt, a bottle of wine in hand. Beyond, daylight was a marmalade stain on the western sky, painting everything in a fiery glow through the bare trees. "You look fabulous," he said, smiling. She wore a simple white blouse, jeans and flats. No time for anything else, and not like she had anything else nicer. "So do you." Georgina shut the door against the shifting leaves and animal smell. Wine was open, green crackers set out. They sat in the glass-walled sunroom off the den, watching the black leaves stir and chase themselves across the lawn. They talked, debated, bantered. He asked about the boy in Sunrise Village, a topic well suited to his curiosity about rare, bewildering deaths. He loved solving puzzles, fitting seemingly unimportant pieces together, like unraveling the full life his grandmom had lived by her books and photos and mementos. He asked about Georgina's life in Jefferson Hollow. She explained how her mom had died before Georgina finished college, leaving her the diner and the house, plus a mortgage, student loans, and staff. Because her mom had used her savings on drugs and experimental therapies, Georgina had nothing except the diner. Thankfully, Mrs. D'Angelo knew the business inside and out, but for 7 years, Georgina barely made ends meet and had been unable to find a buyer. With the sun down, the sunroom's glass walls became black mirrors. Georgina admired how the two of them looked together, cozy, comfortable. Sunset also meant he was spending the night. Dinner served, he raved about it, wondering aloud why it wasn't on the diner's menu. "Because," Georgina replied, "the Hollow's a deep-fried chicken kind of town." The conversation shifted and flowed, wine poured. Georgina repeatedly took a deep breath, preparing to explain the leaving, but every time she came close, Paul described some outrageous memento he'd found tucked in a closet or crawl space and would have her laughing. More wine. Georgina's head and other things buzzed pleasurably. He was smart, confident, funny. She loved the way his eyes lingered on her. Dishes in the sink, they moved to the couch. Logic born of wine and lust concluded that since Paul was spending the night, there was no need to ruin it with talk of the Count's curse. She straddled him, kissing him, feeling him swell beneath her. His warm hands cupped her neck, stroked her skin. She slid off, reached for his pants, undid them, teased him. She kissed his neck, nipped his earlobe and said, "You'll need to come down every weekend." "Georgina," he pulled her hand away. I need to tell you something." She pulled back. "What?" "A wife? Kids?" Straightening up, he said, "I'm selling the house. The Sunrise Village developers approached me. They're buying up everything past Fuller Avenue. They offered me quite a lot. I couldn't say no. These past few days I've been working out the details. Last night I was in the city signing papers. I wanted to tell you earlier at the diner." Georgina stared. "So what does that mean?" "For us," she wanted to add. "With the money, I can repay my student loans and pay off a good chunk of the condo. I still want to buy another place in the country. It would probably be smaller and closer to the city." "Closer. That doesn't mean," he shut his eyes, shook his head. "I'm not explaining myself well." Alcohol and shock and the longing to be touched coiled and spun, wanting to scream at him to get out, just like Colin, right in this room. He was standing, buttoning his pants. I should go." "No," she said, fighting an irrational urge that wanted him to go out into the darkness. "You've been drinking." He was down the hall. Georgina followed. He opened the front door. The animal stink flooded in. Georgina grabbed Paul's arm, turned him around. "Don't." Outside, a ripple moved through the black leaves that blanketed the lawn. "My car is... It's not coyotes," she blurted. Paul shifted his weight. "I don't... The kid, in Sunrise Village, it wasn't coyotes." "What are you saying? You know what killed him?" She prepared for this, rehearsed it, but not after 2 bottles of wine and every bit of her aching for him. "We don't know what it is. We call it the leaving. Every couple of years, in September, the leaves turn black over a couple of days, and then, overnight, they fall off the trees and the smell comes. When it happens, you don't go out at night until the smell fades, usually a few days." Paul rolled his eyes. "I'm serious." She took a breath, straining to keep it together. 11 years ago, someone found a teenager under a porch out around your grandmom's place. Every inch of him had been sliced up. Turns out he'd run away from home and was trying to reach his uncle who lives here. Paul drew a breath, his expression skeptical. Before he could speak, she said, "A few years before that." She paused for an instant, letting her nerves settle. He wouldn't take her seriously if she lost it. And if she lost it and he left, Paul was dead. I'll stop there.